What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 133 of the Noizze Podcast, part of the Noizze Podcast Network and sponsored by Satanic Co. I'm your host, your boy, Chris Pugh, and as ever, I'm joined by my very good friend and Mr. Cynical himself, Samuel Lewis. Mate, how are we?
We are very well. We are very, very well today. It's been a good day. It's excellent to see you once again.
Mate, what a duo of albums we've got to talk about today.
This is going to be my favourite podcast of the year, I think.
I tell you what, in terms of duo album reviews, it's been a while since I've sat down here and been as excited as I am now. And that's with me saying that's off the back of, last week we did Spanish Love Songs and Holding Absence, two bands who I really are big fans of. So yeah, today is a great day to exist in the metal sphere. Let's tell you why that is. With a Noizze Podcast, we're a fortnightly, at the very least, rock or metal podcast that will discuss news, album reviews, etc. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. Me and Sam will be there. The best way to support us is by liking / subscribing, depending on whichever service you may use. That is by far the best thing you can do for us, and thank you to all that have done that so far. We're sponsored by Satanic Co. We're going to leave more about those in that brand and band in our description, but in a nutshell, death metal band that sells you tea and coffee. Let's go. What else could you possibly want? And you can follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Both me and Sam run that account. Let's not hang around, Sam. Let's get straight into this. We're going to start off with Polaris Fatalism that is out on September the 1st via Sharptone Records. It's the band's third full-length album and the follow-up to 2020's The Death of Me. Quick word about The Death of Me, Sam. That was the album that really brought you in to Polaris, if I remember correctly. I listened to Polaris before you'd heard of them. I think the first time you'd heard of them, but the first time you saw them or really encountered them in a way that mattered was when they supported the Architects at Wembley Arena.
Yeah. So I'd heard the Remedy and a few bits like that, but they were kind of just like a passing band for me. And then seeing Architects with them supporting, then getting the record a little bit after that. That was really where the ball started rolling with that.
And I'm not sure whether you remember this, but it was Polaris, Beartooth, Architects, and
I recall it well. Yeah.
So we both turned to each other after Polaris went off. We're like, that was a phenomenal opening set for a metalcore show. And then Beartooth played second. Me and you both turned to each other. It was like, Polaris are much better than these, aren't they? Like, yeah,
that was less than phenomenal in contrast. Yeah.
And do you know what was weird? Like, we were criticising it, but like that's what Beartooth have always been and always will be and always were. So it's like that was where I first started realising that I think I fell off the boil with Beartooth. And
before we talk about Polaris, Sam, I want to say one thing and one thing only: screw Beartooth forever. Anyway, at the album.
I remember like seeing Polaris, and then in comparison to Beartooth, it really made it clear for me that where metalcore was going, or where I wanted metalcore to go, was absolutely in the direction the Polaris were going to take it, just with a larger mix of songwriting and with a wider variety of kind of tropes within the songs. Again, this isn't a Beartooth review by any means, but the problem with Beartooth is that Caleb Sharma writes everything, whereas with Polaris, there's multiple cooks in the kitchen, and that results in a wider variety of metalcore, which is absolutely what you need. We mentioned we were going to talk about The Death of Me. That was the album that really sold you on them, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. It was like a top 5 album of that year for me. It was number 1 for 11 of the 12 months, actually.
I forgot what you picked in 2020.
It was Tool,
yeah.
Token.
Tool and Sleep Token, yeah. That was the year, man. So we watched Polaris at Download, and we saw them off the back of The Death of Me on their UK tour, and you could really visibly see, couldn't you, Sam, like these positive steps that the band were taking, this groundswell that was kind of being created for them. We saw them with Alpha Wolf in Birmingham. Sold out show, chaos, manic, but really the greater litmus test for me in terms of there's a legitimate groundswell progression happening for Polaris in front of our eyes was the crowd size at download on the main stage, and the fact they didn't seem to be eaten up by that main stage. How many bands have we watched on the main stage at a festival, Sam, where this band's really good, but they're getting eaten up a little bit by the size of the main stage. And God, I really wish they were indoors, because if they were in the smaller tents, God, this would be chaos. This doesn't quite work for the main stage. Not something that Polaris suffered with at Download this year. And that was very much where I really, really started to believe that Polaris's progression and Polaris's kind of ceiling is actually kind of difficult to ascertain, because they just keep getting more popular. That popularity just keeps rising.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially when you put it in the context of who they were juxtaposed with on those couple of days, where they were outstripping a couple of bands that you would have assumed would have dominated a stage like that, such as Pendulum, Architects. And you walked away from those kind of performances thinking that Polaris, really, in contrast, have actually done a bit of a better job. They seem to, generally speaking about them, they seem to write songs that combine the right amount of melody, size, and also the kind of necessary percussive force that is kind of necessary for huge stage shows and huge stage appearances. I don't know whether it's luck or judgment, but their sound, the construction of their songs, does seem to fit that kind of setting really nicely. And it doesn't appear to be like a massive transition for them to think of them as like a main stage kind of band. And I think that speaks a lot to their potential success that I hope will be continued with this record.
Just something I wanted to address before we get into Fatalism, the tragic loss of guitarist Ryan Sue. I'm sure you'll agree with me here, Sam, I don't want to make the discussion of Ryan's loss a key theme to this review, primarily because this album is superb in its own merit and doesn't need any kind and doesn't need Ryan's loss, to the loss of Ryan, to be central to why it's great. And I think out of respect for the band and Ryan himself, I just wanted to acknowledge the tragedy of losing Ryan, the guitarist, and how I'm sure the band will never quite be the same. But I'm glad they've decided to continue on and release the album, because I can imagine there would definitely have been a period of time where they would have considered whether they would have considered not releasing this, whether the best thing to do would just be to keep Ryan's last musical additions to themselves. But I think it's a really bold, brave, and amazing step for them to take, to share Ryan's last kind of creative output, because this is quite a special album. And it's a special album because it's a special album, and not because it follows a tragedy.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. It would be remiss of us to use the passing away of a band member in any way to lift up or take away from the reviewers as a whole. And then on top of that, as you say, it demeans from the overall quality and the songwriting of the artists involved for us to entirely sort of get away from that. Want to completely agree with your acknowledgement of that, of the loss of their guitarist Ryan, who hopefully is well represented on this album, because it is truly a great record, and we're going to be able to talk about that in some detail.
Final thing from me, heartbreaking loss of Ryan. And the band have got my condolences. His family and friends have got my condolences, and just full respect to the band for continuing on here and releasing an album that really represents Ryan as well as he possibly could have been represented. So as we get into the review, then of the current wave of metalcore bands, Sam, thinking like In Heart's Way, Hollow Front, Invent, Animate, sorry, Current, Silent Planet, etc. I think Polaris are absolutely at the forefront of that pack, and pretty much have been since they released the Mortal Coil, really, in 2017. They wrote these huge, hearty anthems wrapped in this kind of vitriol, and managed to garner themselves quite a widespread fan base, which is not easy in metalcore. And as we enter album 3. As was the first time I pressed play on Fatalism, I thought, right, there's a real possibility for Polaris to cement themselves into the position of genre frontrunners alongside Currents, in my opinion. And I feel like this record more than accomplishes that feat. In a nutshell, Sam, do you feel like this record puts Polaris as genre frontrunners?
I think they're lapping everyone you've mentioned with this, really.
Oh, Currents included. Oh, mate, what that is a statement. You know, yeah, the Currents.
I'm sorry, I'm astonished that this is their third album.
Yeah.
The maturity, the development, the power, the professionalism, how tight and well constructed everything sounds, the way that they're able to slip between. And I love this on the Death of Me, how it felt that they'd managed to squeeze 15 different ideas into every single song, and they can rotate it on a knife's edge constantly, but still manage to maintain the grip of what they need to with the choruses and the main figures and the riffs, and the terrific breakdowns, and they never lose sight of what's important to the growth of the song, but also manage to integrate all these intricate little parts that make it seem unique and interesting. I love that Currents album, but I've got a personal sort of affinity with Polaris over the last 2 records, and this has not changed that.
Sam, I am going to say something here. I think from Harbinger, the opening song, through to Aftertouch is really a run of 8 outstanding songs. I really feel like from Harbinger to Aftertouch, there really isn't a drop in quality in this album. And then that just sounds like such a lame, broad, vague comment about an album. But seriously, man, I'll talk specifically about the songs in detail in a moment. But honestly, Sam, that 8-song run, I'm just like scratching the back of my head. Like this, every next song is this next huge moment in the band's career where at one point it's like, God, this is a massive kill switch engage sounding song. At one moment I was like, man, this is like the Guilt and the Grief Currents in terms of like the brutality and the adrenaline fuel burning through it. There's so many moments on this album that I was thinking, wow, this is an even higher quality than I even assumed they could possibly reach. A quick mention for Jake Steinhauser, who is the singer of the band. What a performance he puts in for the entirety of the album. He just continues to turn up with game-changing choruses, doesn't he? For about 30 minutes of this 45-minute playthrough of this album. Jake turns up like 7, 8, 9, 10 times to do these huge skyscraper game-changing choruses for the band. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with anything you've said. I was looking at it and it was like, oh, so yeah, pretty much, yeah, like 10 out of the 11, 9 out of the 11, 10 out of the 12 are just tremendous, absolutely tremendous. The way that this really kicks off with Harbinger, which is this like just classic melodic metalcore opens, thunderous drums descends into this terrific percussive riff. And it's like, okay, this is going to be one of the 4 or 5 better songs on the record. This is a classic Polaris song. This is a classic opener. And then you get into Nightmare, and I thought, this is great as well. Okay, I completely understand this being the immediate follow-up as well. And then it just gets better and better. Like Parasite is amazing. With Regards, he's fantastic. Crossfire, best song on the album. Just unbelievable that the opening on Dissipate with the thundering riff underneath, and just unbelievable. There was about let alone just 10 great songs on a 12-track album, or 9 great songs on an 11-track album. There were like 30 different moments where you're like, that's my favorite bit. No, that's my favorite bit. that's my favorite chorus, that's my favorite riff, and it just keeps changing. I could listen to this again later and have a completely different view of my favorite songs than the one that I've had just before reviewing it here. What I find astonishing with this record is not just the qualities, like, because the Death of Me was terrific, but it's the consistency of that quality, and like I said, the fact that it appears to be produced without a single inch of fat, and for me as a listener, not a single moment of boredom. Like, I'm continually engaged, even quiet introspective moments. I know that it's in service of something else that's going to happen later that I'm going to be really, really excited by. I think this is. I said this on the Death of Me, but I feel just as strongly about this in the sense that this is the blueprint for what modern metalcore sounds like at its absolute best. Because we've had this conversation really as long as we've been doing podcasts about how easy it is to write to be stale in metalcore, how quickly you can go from interesting and exciting to, oh, this again, CC Wage War. And it's like bands that are unable to consistently keep at either the quality or consistently keep at the sort of engagement level by producing similar sounding songs. How Polaris have managed to produce an album that really, if you were explaining to a layman, constructively is incredibly similar to The Death of Me, but at the same time has not lost any of its fervor or fury to the point where at no moment, maybe it's just personal taste, but as a metal fan, this ticks so many boxes, but with the additional feeling that I think the real tweak that I think exists here, and I'll see what you think as you make your sort of notes about the album as well. It doesn't appear to be as fast-paced guitar centered as it had been on The Death of Me. There aren't as many pause for harmonic guitar moments, pause for guitar solos, but it appears to be more of a partnership between huge chords, breakdowns, and massive choruses. And that, but it's only slightly that they appear to have edged that way. But that's enough of a tweak for me to make the whole thing seem a little bit more authentic and a little bit more just plain enjoyable. It's barbed wire of an album. Some of these riffs are, but it's packaged in some beautiful melody here, some real great chorus work, and the consistency of this is frankly really impressive.
I completely align with your comment on the massive choruses. I feel like this is, out of the 3 Polaris records, this is by far the one that focuses on the melodic, anthemic, chest beating chorus more than anything else. And that is a comment that might make people sit back a little bit in the chairs, like, oh, what do you mean by that? I mean that in the biggest complimentary way possible. There's a 1-2 punch of Overflow and With Regards, and they really do symbolize the progression that the band has made, because every intricacy, every hard-edged moment that you want from Polaris is songs, but then they are centered around these huge, massive single-on choruses that are going to be just tectonic plate shifting live. And let's call it what it is, Sam. The big choruses, they go down really well live, and they create the biggest groundswell of a fan base. And the catchier the song, the more people that generally tend to turn up. Right? I mean, let's just call it what it is. And this album is just littered with those types of moments, specifically on Overflow and With Regards. I don't feel like Jake Steinhauser gets the credit he deserves sometimes for his singing. He leads the opening of Overflow beautifully, but there's a beautiful little trick that Ryan pulls. When Jamie's screams come in on Overflow, instead of Ryan propping them up with your standard double time rhythm riff, he actually does this gorgeous little clean sweeping riff underneath Jamie's screams, and the juxtaposition works wonders. There's a beautiful little switch up between metal sing-along anthem to metalcore beatdown track in the middle 8. It's almost like the band challenged themselves to see how many times they could effectively fleet between beatdown metalcore and anthemic metalcore. And because before you know it, Jake's heading up the sing-along again. Overflow just fleet between hard edge metalcore track and On When Your Mates Sing Along. Overflow is just this brilliant piece of tactical nous from Polaris, because over the 7-minute run of With Regards and Overflow, there must be 3 or 4 huge chord moments, and there's a lead passage from Ryan underneath Jamie's scream again in With Regards, which is just stunning. And there's a new feather shown off in Polaris's bow as well, because there's a massive climactic ending in With Regards, where the entire band are just turned up to 11 and all playing at the loudest they possibly can in the mix, which is not something I've heard from the band before. I just adore that 1-2 punch of With Regards and Overflow, Sam.
I completely agree. I at the end of Overflow, there's a breakdown that you can sing, like you could hum that riff, like, and I remember thinking that on like Masochist on the Death of Me, and it's like they've brought back singable riffs. You know, it's like phenomenal, like stuff that crowds can get involved with and things. Like, I just love that. And combining that with, I agree With Regards. The opening took me off guard a little bit because the open chords and his vocals, I was like, oh, is this going to be like a poppy kind of ballad? And then it's like they ripped off the mask, and it was me, Austin, it was Polaris all along, and it's just just
I love that reference. That's it.
That's for you, man. But like, that shows that they're able to the balance that they strike between what they're looking for, what they can expand into, and then able to keep underneath running great metalcore constantly throughout that makes them feel that they are both expanding their borders and also keeping a hold of their territory at the same time, which I think is really phenomenal work from the band. There was a bit when I got through Crossfire about 2/3 in there, I literally wrote my notes. Hard not to love this band as a metal fan. What don't they do? Like, name a metal fan. Do you like the choruses? I'm really great. Riffs, great. Lead passages, fantastic. Breakdowns, here we go. Clean, here you go. Like, really, it's kind of a Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades kind of metal record. And unless you're like a real specialist in terms of what you love, if you love black metal, then you might not like this if you're a black metal guy. If you love death metal, that's fine. But I think there's enough here that touches a lot of those bases where there's a pulling in factor. Because the songs are just humongous here. Just the lead behind the chorus and Crossfire that goes straight into Dissipate. The open of that is just unbelievable. That dystopian verse and riffs just hard as nails, and that felt a very Death of Me kind of tune. And then the concluding chorus is just amazing. Fault Line, like they appear to, their default setting appears to be 7 or 8 out of 10 metalcore track. Like, Fault Line, is like in the midst of a lot of great songs on this record, would be a highlight in a lot of their contemporaries. This is what, if In Heart's Wake wrote a song like this, we'd be like, this is the best song you've written for like 2 albums, lads. This is amazing. For Polaris, it's not even the second best record in this section of the album. Like, it's astonishing, really. The listen to, like, every time you hear a song as well, every time you hear a different song, it feels like they're just stepping out into another way of trying to engage their audience. All in vain. The opening of that was immediately reminiscent of North Lane and a little bit progressive with the bass riff and the slightly off color climbing and stuff. And then that ridiculous breakdown after the technical riff. It felt like every song felt like a statement for metalcore, and every song feels like a statement for where the band are moving to. Just a brilliant record, and it's enough of a step forward from that, in that enough of a diversion and a deviation from what we'd call Polaris's traditional songwriting style, as if you can even say that in their third album, but enough of a diversion from their blueprint where I can see where this is continually going, but I don't feel any sense of anxiety about them losing who they are already, because they appear to be striking that balance really, really well at the moment. I this album is excellent, truly excellent.
Try to avoid the recency bias stuff, Sam, but I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say this is the best of the three for Polaris.
I'd need to listen to them side by side and really make a decision. Because I still remember how excited the Death of Me maybe, but it's at the very least it's an argument that I'm not against at all. Like it's one of those, you tell me your favorite Polaris record is the Death of Me, I'm like, cool, mine's Fatalism, and we're not falling out with each other. We don't think each other are a way off base. You know what I mean? It's not one of those kind of conversations. So the fact that it's comparable and is even feels even more expanded is in itself a victory. And then obviously time will tell on what's considered their best record by everybody else.
Did you say The Crossfire was your favourite song on the album?
Yes, I do. I think that is my favourite song on the record.
That's mine as well. If you put the opening of The Crossfire into a higher tuning, I'd swear it was Adam D from Killswitch that was writing it. There's like the delicacy of the clean run from Ryan to open, stunning. And at that point, I really was wondering, where's the fat in this album? Everything that's here is a stunner. By this point, you've been bombarded with like 7 to 8 dissertations on how to write modern metalcore. Everything is worthy. Everything matters. If you love the technicality of metal, you will find that in abundance in The Crossfire / the album in general. Flammable safety risk breakdowns, that they're here in abundance too. Sing-alongs are here in abundance. Brutal screams are here in abundance. It really is just kind of linking back to my previous metaphor, a dissertation of what modern metalcore can be. And I think what really sums up how great this album is you mentioned Fault Line. And Fault Line is a song that if you listen to in isolation, like I purposefully went out my way to listen to Fault Line on its own today. And in isolation, that's a tremendous metalcore track. And it would be the best song a lot of metalcore bands have ever written. But when it follows the run of Harbinger to Dissipate, it just strikes you as a good song. It mixed into the album, it just seems like a 7 out of 10. Listen to it in isolation, you're like, oh my God, this is a phenomenal piece of work. That's how good this album is. A song that in isolation sounds incredible. In the mix of this album, just sounds good. That's the biggest compliment I can give Fatalism by Polaris. I really think it's going to be another needle mover for them, and I think this cements them as absolute genre frontrunners of modern metalcore.
I agree. There's a possibility we're having conversations about this being one of the great 3 album runs in this subgenre. Yeah, it's really that special.
We're going to leave our review of Polaris off there. Stick around or go to the next video if you're interested in listening to our review of the new Sylosis record. But yet, Fatalism by Polaris, out on September 1st via Sharp Time Records. Absolutely unmissable album. Whether you're into metalcore or just metal in general, there really is something here for everyone. A phenomenal piece of work by a phenomenal band. Yep, so that's Fatalism out September 1st via Sharp Time Records. Do not miss it. That's where we're going to leave episode 133 of the Noizze podcast. Thank you very much if you are still here. We are going to be away for 2 weeks and then back with our standard episode. Remember to follow /like/subscribe depending on whichever service you are using. You can follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast, and remember to check out our sponsor Satanic Co. We're going to check out the review list and see what we've got coming up in a couple of weeks' time. That is when we'll be back. Thank you. Remember to like/subscribe. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. We love you. Bye.